Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz, and today, as we are propelling toward free agency, I am joined by a couple of my good buddies, Clinton Bonner and Adam Emmert. Adam, have you come out from beneath the snow at this time of the year?
Negative, Ghost Rider. The snow is full. We still got, I don't know, maybe about half foot out there, but it definitely is starting to warm up a little bit. Starts to make you think about the offseason with the Hawks and like what's going to happen here as the combine just goes down and free agency looming. We had some interesting news in regards to guys being released. And it's starting to feel like spring, even though there's some snow out there, Clinton. I know you are fired up about free agency, some of the potential dudes out there, and I know you got a cool exercise for us today.
Yeah, I am. I am ready to go on a shopping spree, as Jason Turner called out there. Like, why not, Ray? This is the time where we could dream big, right? We could look at lists and we could get all fired up about who is out there. And there was like very light, very, very light news today in terms of franchise tag. I think it was only two dudes, Brandon. That was it. That part was very easy, right? So T. Higgins and, of course, Trey Smith.
Yep.
That's the news.
That's the free agency news. But we did get some news as far as our Seahawks, because it is that week leading up to free agency, and when you tend to see guys released from a team, and our Seahawks, they made some salary cap cut moves, including releasing George Fant. They released, I had it pulled up in front of me, but now it's gone, so I may need your guys' help. George Fant was the interesting one to me because I felt like they cut the wrong Fant. I was waiting for the Noah Fant news. We got the George Fant getting cut news. We got
Dre'Mont.
Dre'Mont Jones was the other big one, at least the biggest one in terms of salary cap cuts. Another guy on the defensive line who is
RRH, Robertson-Harris, of course.
Robertson-Harris. And then another one that we saw coming at the safety position because they allowed him to explore trades.
Rayshawn,
Rayshawn Jenkins. So, yes, those are the four guys. Now the Seahawks save about $20 million in cap space. And that's, as I mentioned the surprise around George Fant, but Adam, were there any for you that maybe caught you off guard?
George Fant was not a surprise for me because he couldn't stay healthy and he was kind of there in emergency break glass kind of tackle and couldn't really perform there. And so you want to save a little bit of money, go out and revamp your offensive line. George Fant is not going to be a part of that. But in terms of the surprises on the list, it was actually the surprises that weren't on the list to me, namely Tyler Lockett. Like that was interesting. I don't know if that has anything to do with, you've released some of this post-June for whatever with all of that nonsense. It all gets sticky. But we all know that the deal that he's currently under isn't one that they're going to want to go with. So not having Tyler Lockett on there was surprising. Not incredibly sad about it, obviously, because we all love Tyler. But I don't know. I thought that Tyler would be gone by about this point, Clinton.
So we are going to go shopping in this episode a little bit later with some of this, faux money we just got back, right? So what I've seen, Brandon, is that it's closer to $27 million, $26 million, which is super. Hey, that's something. With Tyler Lockett, Adam, I think, and I saw this from others. This is not like my own brainchild here, but I did see this and I was like, oh, that sounds about right to me. That they might reserve the Lockett day to be its own thing. Like it will happen quite soon. And when they do it with Lockett, it'll be just him that day. And there'll be, a little bit more special reverence paid to him on social media, et cetera, which if that is the wavelength they're on, I think that's pretty appropriate. I kind of like that. What do you think, Brandon?
I think that with Tyler, there is one deadline in particular that's coming up, and that is May 16th, which is the date that his roster bonus kicks in. So he has a $5.3 million roster bonus that's the date that if he's on the roster, then he would get 5.3. They could agree to negotiate that and defer that. And if they want to continue discussions about how they might want to, if they do want to keep him on the team, a contract that makes sense for everybody, then that could be it too. I don't know if I would call the people released today nobodies, as Newgash points out, but they may just, like you said, want to give him his own day.
Yeah, I think that makes, for me, the most sense. You did mention a surprise, Brandon, and in fact, we have a surprise for the flockers that are out there. So, do you want to do the honors, my man?
Or are we talking about the draft party already?
Why not? Right, to get it out now before we head into the content for today. I say yes.
All right. Well, before we get there, we do want to ask folks that if it is your first time here, go ahead and give us a like, give us a subscribe out on YouTube and on the podcast side too. If you're listening to this, catching it for the first time, subscribe to the show. That way you get all the upcoming shows too, and you don't have to go hunting for us when that time comes. And if you are hunting for us, however, you will be able to find us at the Clearwater Casino Resort Thursday, April 24th. We're going to be hanging out at the draft party there and doing a live stream. So looking forward to that coming up at the Clearwater Casino draft night, day one, and should be a fun time.
I'm so fired up for that. I got my plane tickets, going to come, across the country and meet up with y'all. And spoke to a good friend who said, got to go hit up Paul's. I think you guys said Paul's Bow, right? Very good friend. So that, Paul's Bow said that beautiful town. So I'm excited to explore the western part of the Puget Sound. And for our flockers,
peninsula, as it's called, as locals refer to it.
Gotcha. So it's not the west side of Puget Sound. That's not how it's said.
No.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, I'm new to the area. And for the flockers in our Discord, we're going to put out some special announcements. So for anybody that's in the PNW or anybody that wants to travel in, like I'm going to be traveling in, we're going to be streaming live the 24th and the 25th. But hit that QR code because there's a lot of really cool things they're doing. And there's going to be some Seahawks there already announced. There's like Earl Thomas, Julian Love, and some others that'll be there. So Kenny McIntosh. Yep. And more. So we'd love to see you there, but we'll drop a note to our flockers in the Discord, let you know about more details. And I think Brandon, we might try to plan a special dinner with our flockers.
Yeah. So check that out. Getintheflock.com if you want to get some of those details as well. Get in the Discord. And we hope to see you there. Should be fun.
Sweet.
Get there early before I get kicked out for counting cards.
They do have blackjack.
Cards? Can you do that?
Yeah, you pick one up and you go, that's one. And you pick up a second one, you go, that's two, and then three, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
I got a good tidbit for you guys on this place. I checked out their table games, right? So just to see what they have. They do indeed have blackjack, but talking about counting cards, which I absolutely would not do because that's illegal, sir, is that they actually have 2-deck blackjack, which is, not every casino will.
Easier to count.
It makes it easier to count. Yes, you nailed it. So, well, I'd say Brandon and Adam.
I don't think it's illegal, by the way. I think it's just heavily frowned upon.
Okay, I'll let you have that opinion.
I'm no expert at this. I've seen the movie 21. That's all.
Yeah, I've seen Rain Man. What's the third movie where they count cards?
Hard telling, not knowing. I don't think it's illegal, but you could get a lead pipe to the knee. That's for sure. If you left in a desert somewhere.
Gotcha. Nobody wants that.
MJ Butler's ready to go on a shopping spree for free agents, but maybe through the trade market. Not necessarily a free agent, but someone who is available for trade. We should pick up Myles Garrett, give the Browns a first and second round pick for next year and 2027. For clarity, is this a first round pick and second for next? So these are all future picks. So we keep our picks for 2025. I kind of like that.
And 2026. So it's a first. Yeah. Either way, if you could get on the horn, MJ, and finagle that, and that gets Myles Garrett, Adam, I'd sign for it. You?
I'm interested in having Myles Garrett. I don't know how much is an overpay for Myles Garrett. I don't know that there is an overpay for Myles Garrett, but as we go through some of these free agents, Clinton, that we looked at on the list, I think edge rusher is a really important piece for the Seahawks. I think they're one good to great pass rusher away from this defense being not just really good, but potentially dominant.
Yeah, I agree. We got a kind of a B group, meaning ABC, like a B group of defensive edges. We lose Dre'Mont Jones today, or we cut him. And while he wasn't enormous, he did put up pressures. He was like 4th in pressures for Seattle last year and 2nd in pressures the year before, which is not saying all that much. So to your point there is room for improvement now. Now, I'd say the downside is there's nobody like Myles Garrett on the free agency waiver wire. And Brandon, we're going to a very special top 100 free agency list. And we picked one because we haven't talked about him in quite a while. Who is it?
No, we have not gone to Pete Prisco's world in quite some time. So I did figure it was time to take a look at his top 100.
La 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 la, Prisco's world. La 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 la, Prisco's world. Prisco has his hot tastes and nothing more. That's Prisco's world.
It's just impossible not to bob your head along to that sweet, sweet tune. And yes, Pete Prisco, he used to be a bigger target of ours, but I feel like now that we've gone out of our Super Bowl era, Pete's kind of laid off us a little bit. But hey, we can still use that theme and use that to prop up his top 100 free agent list. So if we're going to use anybody's, why not use Pete Prisco?
Absolutely. So, all right. So with the exercise we agreed upon, we said, hey, look, Prisco put out this list. Now it's got some dudes that got franchised and it's got some dudes that got extended since he put the list out. That's fine. Obviously, they're off the board. What we said was we're going to pick each of us will pick a dude in the first third, the second third, and the third of the top 100 and tell the audience why that's our guy. How do we think that might complement or really improve the team? And I looked into some of the data on like how much it might cost also. And if you guys did, that's great. Or we could even look it up on the fly if it matters to people. But I'd say for the audience listening and those in the Discord too, like chime in, go find the top 100 list. Doesn't even have to be Prisco's, and let's go shopping, boys. What do you say? Who wants to go first? I don't have to go first. I will defer, in fact, but Adam, Brandon, which one of you want to take the lead and say, who's your first top tier, top third pick? From Prisco's
well, this is easy for me, so I will go first. And
okay.
Since Ernest Jones is not yet on the team, I am going shopping for my top available linebacker, and that is Nick Bolton of the Chiefs. I know people might be tired of hearing from me about the potential for Nick Bolton, but this is the type of free agent where I have a very good feeling that it's not going to be one of those bust free agents if you were to go after a player like Nick Bolton, because the Chiefs, they paid Trey Smith. They got to keep him around, obviously focusing on the offensive line. You can't pay everybody, even with the salary cap being what it is. And I think they're losing a really good player to free agency with Nick Bolton because they have to franchise tag one of their offensive linemen. And I think the cost between Ernest Jones and Nick Bolton would be relatively negligible. So going out and getting the best free agent linebacker on the market.
So if you were to go out and get Bolton, who's a fine player, he absolutely is. He would be a good addition if you could figure it out. Why would you pay the same money to go get a guy that hasn't played in your system, a guy that you didn't trade draft capital for? Why wouldn't you just pay Ernest Jones? I just think that the likelihood of this happening is like 2.3%. I
think it's unlikely too, because I think that the preference probably would be Ernest Jones. And so I think at this point, if the Seahawks are going to know whether or not Ernest Jones is coming back to the team. And if he is, then great. But if he's not, then you have to, based on what I saw last year with the difference in this team at linebacker and having a solid linebacker and having a subpar linebacker, I think Mike McDonald needs a solid linebacker. And if Ernest Jones can't be on this team, if Nick Bolton can't be on the team, then your options are starting to look pretty limited beyond that.
Well, I mean, hey, we're going to Prisco's world, right? So I think Brandon can select who he wants. I do think Bolton's a better linebacker. I think that is an answer. I think he's a better linebacker than Ernest Jones. I think Ernest Jones is a very good linebacker. Yeah, could be a smidgen. I see, for the folks that are listening on audio, you're giving a little minuscule, but I do think he's better. And I think he moves just a little more fluidly. And I really like the way he covers too. And not that Ernest Jones is bad at all. Remember Ernest Jones goading Kyler Murray and getting a beautiful pick right down the seams. So it's not like Ernest Jones was at all bad. And I think Brandon made that point. However, I do think if we're just like, who's a better linebacker? Brandon, I'm with you. I think Nick Bolton is still the cream of the crop that's out there. So if you can get the upgrade, hey, we're in Prisco's world. I say, why not?
All right.
How about you?
Got, Adam?
Yeah, Adam,
all
you
right.
take it.
Well, so Nick Bolton was number 14 on good old Prisco's list. My number 1 pick and the top third would be number 15. Will Fries, the offensive guard from the Indianapolis Colts. He's really well regarded throughout the league in terms of his play. He did get injured last year. He had a season-ending injury. Wasn't able to finish the season, but a young guy. And I think that in this offseason, your strategy, if you're John Schneider, has to be that you get one quality guard in free agency and hope that you can draft one, and or you're looking at Lamea or Christian Haynes and going, you know what, in a better system that really helps that offensive lineman instead of one that hangs them out to the dry like we had last year, going into their second year, one of those two guys is going to make that second year leap and be your other starting guard. And I think if you go about it in that way, you're not going to end up in a situation that we've been in the last few years, which they kind of just are throwing dudes in there and trying to patch it together. I mean, this is a young dude, and he's a guy that can come in and help solidify the interior. And he just looks like a meat and potatoes type of offensive guard, and that's exactly what we need. I just need you just give me competent.
He wants good. The injury scares me, but he graded out very, very well last year before the injury. He was hovering around 87 on PFF, which again, we know it's not a perfect thing, but it's a barometer. And his history is interesting too. He's a Penn State guy, so I kind of always like that kind of pedigree. I think he's 27 years old. He was a 7th round pick, which is interesting. Speaking of pedigree, just like these dudes that a team could take in the 7th round, like the Colts, and build around. And he was a very competent guard. So he was an honorable mention for me. I like him. The injury scares me, and I have like Connor Williams PTSD. I know it's different. I get that. I'm just a little scared of bringing in a dude. I don't think he's gonna hike the ball over 40 dudes' heads and then up and retire. I don't think that will be his exact arc. But Brandon, I'm a little scared by Will Fries and that injury. What do you think?
I think his name sounds delicious. I'm waiting for him to be a part of the Uber Eats commercials with the last name. But he's one of the guards that I looked at. I also and maybe you would have mentioned yours, Clinton, if you had another guard on your list. But James Daniels for the Steelers was another guy that I looked at here in the top 30. And yeah, I know I kind of did that with my head too, kind of shake it back and forth, because he's again, he's a solid veteran and another guy who's coming off of an injury. But I think that both with Fries or Daniels, you're probably looking at a guy that you could get on a 1-year deal and kind of see how it plays out. Whereas you're not having to make that big splash signing in free agency where you got to commit multiple years to a guy. So I like the strategy of Adam going for a guy coming off of an injury who can play at a high level, but you have that 1 year, and then maybe you can look at drafting or developing behind him, and you don't have to, it's not like a guy like Trey Smith who now you'd have to trade picks for and then also sign to a long-term deal.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea with him coming off the injury, right? Like we're shopping on a budget, boys. Like you're not going to be able to go out there.
I know we just got Nick Bolton, so I mean,
right? There's just not a lot
away.
Of free agency money left. But if he is coming off injury, it might drive the price down a little bit and might be a good value. Is there a sneaky wide receiver in free agency? God, I freaking hope not. Like, let's not waste one freaking dollar on a wide receiver in free agency. No,
I have an answer for comic binge a bit later, and it's another honorable mention, but I have it on my sheet, so I will crank it up later because I had one at a different tier that I think is sneaky good. But then I saw what they were estimating his price tag to be, and I said, no, I was like, no, thank you. But I won't give away more than that. I will, however, I'm kind of surprised, and I didn't take it either, that either of any of us didn't go for Drew Dahlman on the Falcons, right? So really good zone blocker, center.
It's on
He's
my
been
list.
good for okay, but he's top tier.
He is top tier, but I
Yeah.
I had 3 picks just in case, I had to go second
Oh,
or
gotcha.
third. I was prepared in case you guys stole one of mine.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, okay. So similar thing. I had Drew Dahlman sitting there just in case. He was kind of like my next guy. I think,
Yeah.
but he's going to cost 15, 17 million a year, but also a plug and play center, like a really good, and this would be an upgrade, I think, currently to Olu center. However,
I think he would be.
he would be. I believe he would perform there for sure. He's been very good. So the guy that I'm going with is a guard. I went lower tier. I went down to the bottom of the barrel because I want to go bargain shopping too for tier 1. So you figure tier 1 is like 33, maybe 34 slots. I'm at slot number 32 in Prisco's world. Lions guard. He's 34 years old, and I don't care. Kevin Zeitler. Why don't I care? Because he's been good every single freaking year of his career, and he's a really good guard, and he can play the zone scheme. And while he's 34 and he's not going to be a 24-year-old out there, we understand that. Adam, very similar like concept to what you were saying. It's like, hey, the Lions got him for $6 million. So even if you had to do $2 million for 14 years, where you could kind of scrub that last year, but give him some extra money up front and just say, our guard is figured out. Now I realize he's older, but our guard is figured out for 2025, one of 2 positions. I feel pretty good about that. And if we're talking about we need veteran presence, I feel really good about that as well. So, Adam, I called your name out there. Kevin Zeitler's a big time vet. How would you feel if he was a Seahawk?
He had a nice season last year, stayed healthy all year, but you had concerns about, Fries and his injury, coming back this year. I mean, Zeitler's been hurt a lot later in his career and has missed games, and he's 34 years old. So that was the only reason I stayed away from that, because we've seen this show before where, you bring in the 32, 33, 34-year-old offensive lineman, and it's not like you're bringing in an edge rusher or something like that, a guy who rotates in and all that. You're bringing in a dude who's got to play down in, down out. And you just get to that age point that it's like, dang, man, that feels like another patch, right? Like not necessarily a long-term solution. 100%. So that was the only reason I stayed away from it. If they did it, I hope they don't sign him for 14 years. Like you said, that's a long time to sign a 34-year-old.
I couldn't decide if it was $2 million for 14 years of experience or if he was going with the unusual contract structure of
I did a Shohei contract. Yeah, that was what I was. That was really extending it out, really kicking the can. If you have to do 2 years at 14 million, that's what I was trying to get at. If I said 14 years, that's just delightful.
Yeah. So I'd stay away from that deal. But there is a window there. They could bring him in for a year and get good play potentially, and have him mentor maybe one of the younger guards, like we talked about earlier in Haynes and Lamea. So it's not a terrible idea. That's just the only reason I stayed away from it.
We've got live executive producer Sam Gelber coming in with a $12 super chat. Says, didn't know you guys were doing this. Did you guys talk about Alex Kappa? And Alex Kappa not on the Prisco top 100 free agent list, but now that he has been cut, Alex Kappa available. And that has some potential because he's a guy that plays guard, and he was cut from the Bengals. So
30 years old,
has had some injury issues too, has had a guy who was really good in Tampa and then got signed by the Bengals, he had a really good first year and then has kind of dropped off steadily. And I don't know if last year was necessarily due to injury or if he's just struggling now at this point, but he's a guy who I think I would at least want to explore, bring in, and see if it's what his situation is, whether or not last year could be an anomaly, because I like the idea of someone like Alex Kappa more than a guy like Laken Tomlinson, who is Tomlinson has just kind of been mediocre his entire career, and Kappa has at least had several solid seasons before he's kind of gotten into these mediocre years with the Bengals. Adam.
Yeah, a guy that has some pedigree and a guy with experience. And I mean, again, just bring me one competent guard. And when I'm saying competent, I'm saying like, what level is that? And for me, it's like a little over what Lamea showed us last year. Lamea had some really great stretches and some really horrific stretches. And so what you're looking for is a guy. So that's not quite competent. Like, there were some exciting moments, but not quite competent yet. And so just get me a little bit better than that. A guy that you're not looking at. I know Affetti was a tackle, but like we're always saying F you Affetti, like every other game, right? Like just a guy who's not that.
Right. And Kappa was in that range, I think, this year for the Bengals, where they're like, oh yeah, Bengals fans, they're ready for Kappa to move on because he had a couple multi-sack games. He had a couple he had some rough games. Clinton, do you want to address MJ Butler? I know MJ's got a couple suggestions. His top 30, I think.
Exactly. I'm trying to look at the top 30 or so, and he's pulling Zach Bond, who was number 10 on the Prisco World list. And really, you guys addressed Zach Bond in the last flagship show, and I thought it was great. So my recap of your guys' discussion was, hey, really nice player. Philadelphia got him at a great deal with $3.5 million, plays at an all-pro level, wins the Super Bowl, has a beautiful pick in the Super Bowl. Can't do better than that. However, now attempting to kind of buy that stock at its peak, if I'm, putting a metaphor on top of it, is the wrong time to go at a Zach Bond type player. And I really thought you guys kind of nailed that in the flagship. And I can't add more to that. Do I think he's a good linebacker? I do. But how much is he going to get now because of that one really good year performance? I think it's going to be quite a bit. So, Brandon, how's my recapping skills?
Yeah, I think he nailed it. I think that kind of goes into one of the other suggestions with Charvarius Ward. I think paying corners coming off, if a team doesn't want their corner, it just hasn't generally worked out well for guys going to other teams. You see a big drop off, and if they are worth paying that, tend to see a team go ahead and make that signing. So I would be a little bit hesitant with Charvarius.
And did his play drop off because he just became a bad player, or did he go through one of the most horrific things that you can go through in your personal life, during that season? So, yeah, I mean, I'm a little more open to the Ward idea than I am the Bond idea. And it's not just buying at the peak for Bond. You're buying at the peak for Bond, and he's only showed 1 year of greatness, right? And that's a little concerning there. So I'm open to the Ward discussion, depending on the number, because I do think that they're one quality corner short in the defensive backfield. And, he's a guy with good size and, somebody who's, played well against us. So I'm into it, but like, I would much rather have them address corner in the draft. I'm kind of looking at free agency as like, hey man, just in case we don't get that dude in the draft, here's a solution. And here's a guy we can plug in. We can be okay because we're doubling down. Like we're going for it this year. We're not tearing it down.
Adam, I'm curious to get your take on this because Jason Turner brings up the point of Trey Smith. And I think we kind of passed over him because he was franchise tag by the Chiefs, but he would be available then via trade. And are the Chiefs making that franchise tag on a player like Trey Smith, knowing that they might be able to get some draft capital back for him with the lack of guards out there on the free agency market? Would you be willing to say you have to pay, I don't know, a second round pick and that contract for Trey Smith? You think you would do that to make the move for Trey Smith?
I'd do it, but they'd hang up on you. Hey, look, at the end of the day, are the Kansas City Chiefs going for another Super Bowl next year, or are they looking to retool their whole roster and kind of change things around? I think they're going for it again.
Yeah.
And they've lost 2 Super Bowls in the Patrick Mahomes era, and both Super Bowls is when their offensive line was depleted. So they have one of their best offensive linemen who's young up for a contract. They franchise tag him. I think that tells you everything you need to know. They're not getting rid of a dude who can play. And so as much as I'd love to give up, the second round pick and pay the man his money,
they need a wide receiver.
Great. Yeah.
DK for Trey.
That ain't happening. That ain't happening. And especially after some of the comments from the combine from Schneider and Coach Mike. Like, DK is a big part of their plans in the future. I think they're listening. If somebody blows them away, then sure, but I don't think they really have any intention to trade DK.
Yeah, clearly Tyler for Trey makes a lot more sense for sure. And I do want to put this up on screen, and then we could rotate to the mid tier. But MJ also saying Tevin Jenkins, listed as Chicago Bears OT, but he did kick into guard, and he played pretty well on a team that had challenges, right? Call it what it is. Brandon, you're speaking to EJ, I think later this week, or you're recording with him, but I think it's later this week. He's probably pretty happy with some of the early moves the Bears are making, but this is Jenkins. And what I like to put on, I like putting these on screen too, just so people see the names, because you got to hear them a few times, because, we're focused on our team in Seattle. And then it's like, do we really know all the players out there? Do we all know who Tevin Jenkins is? Maybe so, maybe not. So just to understand that if you do see that name in the next couple of days, he is a tackle that successfully had a pretty good year at guard. So not bad. And again, that was number 25 on the Prisco list. So it does qualify for the top 30.
This is a major red flag for me, because are the Bears a team that need offensive linemen to protect Caleb Williams?
Yes, a lot.
The answer to that is yes. If he hasn't been signed by the Chicago Bears and is going to free agency, like, they're letting him go to free agency. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, has the Bears offensive line been good or terrible for the last 5 to 10 years?
It's bad.
Generally terrible.
Terrible. Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then no. Like, I just want none of those guys. Exactly as you put it, Brandon. No.
Yeah. Give me old man Zeitler.
Yeah. No, I'd be more excited about that. Yeah.
Thank you. You all finally agree. All right. Awesome. So let's kick it over to tier 2. I'd say round 2, but tier 2. So Brandon went first last time. Adam, why don't you take tier 2 away? So now basically 34 to 66 in that middle of Prisco world. Where are you taking us?
Free agency is a period where teams can make a lot of mistakes. And usually when that mistake is made is when Brandon brought up a great example with Jenkins right here, right? Like, they could pay this guy. They need offensive linemen for their team, yet they're letting him walk, and somebody's going to pay the guy. They are. The types of free agents that you're looking for are on teams that have been good or were good last year, and they're having to pay a bunch of dudes, and they just don't have that much money left over to maybe sign a quality player that they've brought up through their system that's going on a second contract. I mentioned that I think edge rusher is a position they need to, triple, quadruple down on here. And so I like the idea of Joseph Asai from the Cincinnati Bengals. Young dude, he's in his mid-20s. Yeah, he ended up being the starter last year at one point, had 5 sacks. And I don't look at that as the Bengals going, he was good, but I don't really want to pay this guy. I look at it as, hey, we got to pay Jamar. We got to pay T. We got to pay Trey Hendrickson. So there's just not going to, and they're already paying Burrow. So they're up against the cap, and got quality players can then leave teams like that in free agency. He's young. He'd be worth kind of taking a swing on, I believe. Now, with that said, it's a little bit of the Dre'Mont Jones situation where, young guy has showed some flashes and you're going to pay him a pretty good contract. Like, can he live up to that? I don't know.
Yeah, with the guys in this tier 2, the guys that would fall into that similar space, a guy like Chase Young, like, that's a guy who it's kind
gives up on plays.
He does. When I'm thinking of guys who though could be a bargain, and a guy that maybe Coach McDonald can get more out of, because we've seen guys go to Coach Mike and then resurrect their career. And so in this bargain type area, Young would kind of fit that for me, and I think would come in at a cheaper option where I like Osai too.
Osai is interesting too, background wise, born in Nigeria, and it came up to America obviously at a certain point, went to college at Texas, so it wasn't like Nigeria and then, some tiny small school because wasn't playing football. Like, no, played football at a high level at Texas. And he's going to be 25 years old this year. So he is quite young. So I like the setup though, Adam. I think you sold me. He was a dude I was looking at also. And I went a very similar direction, but I think I broke all the rules you just laid out. So this is not a great team. This is,
well, as the snail points out too, the Bengals D wasn't exactly great last year either.
It was bad last year, but it was good the year prior.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like, instead of buying high on somebody like Bond, right now you're buying low on somebody like Asai, who also they just don't have the cap room to pay.
So this was my mentality for my mid-tier here also, because I look at, we talked earlier, I look at our defensive, our edge group, and I go, okay, it's got Hall, you got Mafe, you got Chenna looking like he's going to restructure, and I want to see speed back from Chenna. He came back. He did not look like himself. I know it's a very small sample size, those last couple of games, but to me, he looked really slow. So hopefully that's just another year of getting the knee and everything else correct, and the speed comes back, but he's getting close to 30, Uchenna Nwosu. At some point, the speed don't come back, and that's just the reality of life. So another way to kind of bolster the defensive end, but roll the dice a little bit. And you mentioned like, hey, it wasn't great last year, but the year previous. Well, this dude, Malcolm Kuntz, Raiders defensive end, he blew out his knee with 3 days before the kickoff last year. So he missed the entire season. So we got to rewind the clock a little bit and say, well, what did 2023 look like? And a little bit about him. 3rd round pick, 79th overall, pick in the 2021 draft from University of Buffalo, blows out his knee last year. But in 2023, he's an 81 on PFF, a little less in run blocking, but a good pass rusher. He has 8 sacks in his 3rd season. And the last 9 games, he had 0 sacks to start the year. Last 9 games, 8 sacks. And if you remember that Christmas Day game when the Raiders were getting better and they actually beat the Chiefs, it was like whatever, 20-14 or something like that. So 2 years ago, they beat the Chiefs. He had 3 sacks against Mahomes that day, and he finished the year really strong. Now you got Max Crosby. They're double teaming Max all day. Of course, I understand that. But roll the dice. They're saying he might cost between $8 and $10 million. And he's shown he can get home in the NFL. So interesting player. Brandon, how you feeling about the Kuntz?
I was feeling good until I heard that number, and then I got a little bit iffy, especially since it is breaking some of those rules with regard to coming from a good team versus a bad team. But I like the thought process. It's kind of a similar process to Asai. You're looking for young guys who have some big upside, and that could be there with Kuntz.
How about you, Adam? You probably saw Kuntz on the way to Asai, yeah?
I did, and I'm not going to lie. I don't know a ton about the dude. I don't watch a lot of Raiders football. I just don't, because I value my eyeballs in my life. So I just don't do it. But the way that you set it up, I mean, he sounds like he's an intriguing prospect. I mean, if he can live up to the idea of what he was before the injury, $8 to $10 million isn't a crazy amount for an edge rusher, a quality edge rusher. But it is a risk. And, again, another young dude coming off an injury, scared you off an offensive lineman. It made you go with an old dude. But for edge rusher, it sounds like you're right as rain with that.
Yeah, they don't snap the ball. It's fine. Yeah. So it's all perfect there. All right. Do we have anybody else chiming in? So I see that MJ also likes, was it Dan Moore?
Yes.
Oh, Don Moore. Okay. Dan Moore from Pittsburgh. All right. So I think that, Brandon, that means you, right? You're up on your second tier.
Neither of you guys in the second tier picked Ernest Jones, our own free agent linebacker. But since I already,
because they're just gonna sign him. Like
that's why.
I was just like, okay, so he's gonna be on the team.
All right, fine. Well, I want a Sam Howell replacement, so I'm going out and getting Justin Fields, who after Sam Darnold on this board at quarterback, there is no other suitable backup quarterback, and so I'm going with Justin.
Adam seems to hate it. Adam,
fuck that, and never ever. Justin Fields is a bad player. Justin Fields is a bad quarterback. I liked him coming out of the draft. I was wrong. He sucks. I mean, that's a lateral move from sucky Sam to sucky Justin. Like,
it's not a lateral move. Justin can actually move.
So can Sam Howell. That was his big thing. Well, he can run and he's tough. Just screw that. Never, ever for Justin Fields. The guy can't hit a broadside of a barn at 10 feet. Like, I just no. Absolutely no. Hey, Quinn Ewers. God, you might as well just, again, it's that same bucket. Ewers, I'm halfway through Ewers right now, and all I can think is freaking ew. I don't understand. I don't understand what people see in this guy. Like, I really don't. No, I haven't got all the way through. Maybe my mind will change. Look,
2024. So he came out this week with the combine, and during his interviews, it sounded like he'd been dealing with a lot of injuries this year. An oblique injury that he played through for most of the year, and then I think even a lower leg injury this year. So I would say that maybe put more stock into 2023 when you go back and watch, but I don't know if that's going to be that much better.
It's not. It's because it's not good. It's not good tape. The guy is not a good quarterback. Like, I don't understand. Look, if you want to get a good, a potentially good backup quarterback, I've said it and I'll say it again. Trade a 7th round pick for Jordan Travis to the new GM who didn't draft the guy. He should be healed up by now, and he's a legit talent.
All right,
man. So my reaction is definitely not as strong as Adam's, and I still think Justin Fields has potential, but I also thought Sam Howell had potential, and I think I'm wrong on that one, right? And Adam was ahead of me last year. That he's like, no, never. This guy really can't play, and I thought he could. So I don't hate it, Brandon. I think if you have to put a dude in for a couple of games and you could win in different ways, which you talked about in episodes ago, and why, if they were to move on from Geno, what type of quarterback could win a few games? I think I've seen enough from Fields that he could win a few games. And I think they would figure things out. That Kubiak is we did the tape review against the Commanders with who was the quarterback, their rookie.
With Rattler.
Rattler, right. I was just having a hard time pulling his name. With Rattler, and successful. They almost won that game. They really should have won that game. So
game with another bad quarterback. Rattler stinks.
Well, he played a pretty good. Well, point being, he was still put in position to march them downfield a couple of times and put them in a position to win. I think Fields could do similar things.
We're talking about backup quarterback, right, Adam?
Yes, backup.
Yeah. So I agree. We can do better at backup quarterback. So my suggestion would be, it's just a humble suggestion, maybe do better at backup quarterback instead of just going out and get another guy who stinks.
I'd rather draft also. But I don't want to. Listen, I don't mind spending a 3rd or a 4th if you think a guy's good. If you think a guy's good, you think a guy's good. That's fine. But that's fine by me. I'm also okay if they just let Sam Howell stick around for the year and figure it out.
People are down on a guy like Will Howard coming out of the combine because his receivers couldn't catch. Then that's fine. Like if he falls way down the board because of a combine performance where he's throwing to dudes he doesn't normally throw to and threw relatively good balls. It's just that people are dogging him because he's so inaccurate because his receivers can't catch. That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to see how well the dude throws. And so, if he falls because of that, go snag that guy.
Oh, absolutely. He's on my list of like, hey, guys in the middle-ish rounds that if you want to take a flyer, have at it. Like, I think that's a guy that you can do that with. I also remember back to last year when Bo Nix was terrible at the combine. That turned out a certain kind of way. So, I'm with you on that one, Brandon. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So we'll go to tier 3 now, and that means I'm going to lead off. So, all right. I kind of went back to a little bit something, Adam, you were saying earlier, a player on a team where maybe the defense wasn't as good this year, but I've seen him perform well, and I've seen that defense fire on higher cylinders than they did in 2024. So at number 71, I can't get enough of a plug and play defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman. So this is BJ Hill from the Bengals, 30 years old. I've seen that guy. You said, hey, I don't watch a lot of Raiders football. Neither do I. They're not on the games, but the Bengals have been on TV quite a bit. They had that run. They should have won that Super Bowl, and they get the benefit of they're on TV a lot. And if I'm not watching Seattle and the other game that's on, Bengals are on quite a bit. I've seen BJ Hill just eat up the middle over and over and over again. And he comes with certainly more of a dash of a pass rush than Jonathan Hankins gave us last year. So I think he's maybe a tiny bit lighter, but whatever. I think he's a Hankins plus with a slight more upside. Cool. We just cut Dre'Mont again. We don't know what's going to happen with Reed. Maybe we resign him. Maybe we don't. Even if we do, rotational BJ Hill right in the middle of that Seahawks defense. I like it. Adam and Brandon, I'm seeing some head nodding. Adam, what do you think?
That was my dude. I guess
Yes.
that was going to be my suggestion.
All right.
for all the reasons that you just listed. And then on top of that, with Jaron Reed and Hankins hitting free agency here, are you going to bring both those guys back? We need to have that, nose type player to put next to Byron Murphy. He's just not quite big enough to be like that traditional, right over the center nose guy. I don't think. I mean, maybe he'll prove me wrong going forward. Maybe he gets even stronger. I don't know. But I love the idea of hitting the trenches early in free agency, hitting the trenches late in free agency. And I think you could do that with BJ Hill. And again, all the same reasons with Osai earlier, a guy that's not going to be able to be paid, who's maybe still a good player because of other contract obligations for the Bengals.
Yeah, I was nodding my head, not necessarily with Hill, but because I recognize that it's a big need. And also in this area is Sebastian Joseph Day, who we have seen a lot of from the Rams, and is a similar type of player who can plug up the middle, stop the run. He might not have the pass rushing, like a little bit of, like BJ Hill's maybe a little bit plus on the pass rush side, where Joseph Day isn't, where he's more of the solid run guy. And but I'm also thinking about replacing Hankins, and so Joseph Day would probably be that guy for me. But for my guy in this area, it sounds like Adams was already taken. So
I've got a second one. I've got a second one if we have
to. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what I think. I'm next in the rotation anyway. So
yeah.
I will get to mine right after I get to Ryan 911, live executive producer, coming in with a $9.99 super chat and saying, "Go Hawks, go Hawks, Ryan."
Yeah, buddy, go Hawks, man. Appreciate you as always,
dude.
So mine is
amazing.
at number 70. And it is tight end Juwan Johnson, who was the Saints' leading receiver last year. Bring him to Seattle, pair him back up with Cubes, and now you have, I guess personally, I would be okay with moving on from Noah Fant as well as George Fant, and then having that, maybe draft a tight end. You have Juwan Johnson. I feel like this makes some sense, but gosh, even if you're keeping Noah Fant, depending on the cost, the cost you might be paying too much at tight end than if you bring in free agent Juwan Johnson. But the idea of pairing him back up with Cubes is intriguing.
I'll take this one real quick and say, I don't love him as a pass blocker. That part of his game, I think, is like C-. I think he's a pretty good pass catcher. And I didn't realize he led the Saints. I don't think that's really any great shakes with the injuries they had and the type of offense they had to run last year with all those injuries in quarterback and the offensive line. He's not my favorite tight end. There's other dudes out there. And there's also not just rumors that the Raiders are actively shopping Michael Mayer, right? Because they got Brock Bowers and they're shopping Mayer. And I saw, a proposed trade, which are always fun to talk about. They're like, why don't we send, who was it? Charbonnet. Yeah, you saw that too. Charbonnet for Mayer, straight up, swap picks, give Pete his guy back, and we get a tight end. I like that. I like the idea of a tight end, Brandon, but I don't think Juwan Johnson's the type of tight end that I want on this team. That's my feel at this point. If that
happen, one, you don't give up any draft capital this year to go get a need at tight end. Two, you don't pay free. I guess you're still paying Mayer whatever he's owed under the cap. Is he still under his rookie deal? So
he's still a rookie because he was taken the year before Brock Bowers.
So that is intriguing. The other part of it is I don't know if the Raiders would necessarily do that because this is such a strong running back draft that I don't know, in terms of positional value, like would the Raiders really be interested in that? If they are, then great. If not, I have a hard time with that idea, them thinking that yeah, that they would just draft a dude.
How about you,
Yeah.
Adam?
That makes some sense, Brandon. I hadn't thought about it in that light, but if they were interested in absolutely delightfully average Zach Charbonnet, they are more than welcome to have him, and I will take a second tight end, because I think what you're speaking to with the Juwan Johnson thing here is the idea that you're going to have two solid tight ends that are available and ready to rock week in, week out. And I think you can pencil Barner in for one. I really like what he was able to put on tape last year in a rookie year in a tough offensive system. Look, Cube's like Johnson enough to use him quite a bit last year. I had no earthly clue he had 129 catches last year. Like,
Wild.
that's an insane amount of catches for a tight end. Like that's high level. So I do think Barner could be more your blocking tight end, and Johnson could fit in. I don't know what the number would be. I don't even know what a fair number is for a player like that. But it's interesting because I do think tight end is a need.
129. I mean, I missed that. Jeez Louise.
I had no clue till just now.
Yeah. Is that right? I mean, I was looking at these dudes, prepping for today, but
3 seasons with 129 catches.
I was gonna say, I was like,
that's freaking insane. Yeah. Okay. So if it's 3 seasons with 129 catches, then I guess we're talking more like George Fant range or Noah Fant range, anyways.
He had 50 last year, so very much more in the Noah Fant. Unlike Fant, he did score more touchdowns, and he scored touchdowns 7 in 2022. And then 4 and 3. So, but he had the most receptions and most yards of his career last year. So, but okay, not 129. I'm glad we got there, because I was like, that cannot be right. All right, I did promise. Who was it earlier? I think it was Comic.
I thought you were talking targets, and that didn't seem that strange to me because he played all year in a.
That's a lot of targets, though.
For a tight end, yeah, but they do a lot of those little dump off passes too. So that sounded. Out of the range for me.
The good news is he's not, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Justin Jefferson. He's not getting that kind of level, but still a nice football player. I did promise Comic Binge earlier, guys, that I did have a sneaky wide receiver in tier. He happens to be in tier 3.
Yeah,
that I like quite a bit. It's gonna be no shock to Adam, because he knows that I have a strong, Northeast bias. That I think Darius Slayton's a good wide receiver. I think he's put up really good numbers, and he's a guy who gets behind defensive backs a lot. He was like a 4.4 runner, so it's not like a 4.3 guy, but he's fast enough, and he's a good route runner. And I mean, the Giants, he was kind of a 1 for a little bit, but he's not really a 1. So on our team, he'd be a clear 3, and is a dude that can stretch the field, which I think we might need. So I like Darius Slayton. However, I said earlier too, I went and checked out what they're suggesting he'll get paid.
I bet it's crazy. I bet it's like easily like 12 million or north of it.
They're saying 9 to 10 million, but still, for me,
for a number 3, no.
It's a number 3 in a system where we're going to play a lot of 12 and a lot of 21, and I just can't see spending $10 million on a third wide receiver when you got Bobo and White, who are sitting there, and one of those two I think could just go take it for pennies on the dollar. So, Adam, is my Northeast bias hurting you? How do you feel about Darius Slayton?
Who? I mean, literally, he's such a mediocre player in the league. Like, number one, you brought up the contract stuff, and I think that's the number one reason why you don't pay wide receivers in free agency, because the wide receiver market is insane. It's insane. It started with the dude that ended up going to Jacksonville, Christian Kirk. Like, why in the world do you pay somebody like Christian Kirk big money and inflate the market? Now it's just it's insane.
Now we're franchising T. Higgins.
Exactly. It's insane. There are 20 Darius Slaytons in this draft.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's wide receivers everywhere. You never pay a wide receiver 3. I couldn't be more out on taking, a guy from a terrible team that hasn't been good for that team necessarily. It's been fine, I guess. No.
The guy for me that when I scrolled down to the bottom of the list, because I also, like you, recognize that maybe wide receiver is a sneaky need at wide receiver 3. And I was also looking at potential speed guys because you want to find ways to get DK the ball. You want to find ways to get JSN the ball, but you also want a guy who can really stretch the field, I think, to take away, some of that, take the top off the defense a little bit. And so if a guy like Hollywood Brown, who's now been on 3 teams in the last, 3-4 years, if he's a guy who's available at the tail end of free agency and you're looking at a value type contract, then I think a guy like Hollywood Brown could kind of fit into that gadgety type role and not be super expensive. And that would be kind of in that area, Adam.
What's a budgety number for somebody like Hollywood Brown?
I don't know, 2 million, 2.5 for a 1-year deal.
All right, fair enough. Would you rather pay Tyler Lockett $2 to $5 million for next year?
Of course.
Or would you rather pay Hollywood Brown?
I'd rather pay Tyler, but
okay. Well, there you go. Yeah.
We'll see. Speaking of that, Barry, aka Van T, says DK getting shopped makes Tyler not getting cut sense. I disagree with the DK getting shopped part because I believe that it's the Seahawks taking calls on DK more than them shopping DK, especially when you listen to John Schneider, Mike McDonald about how they feel DK plays into the team moving forward. Now, whether or not you buy it, because it is kind of lying season, and maybe they are out shopping him because they just want to see where the value is, especially if they're looking to re-sign him potentially and want to know what kind of value he has. That could be part of it too. But I really don't think it plays into Tyler. Like if DK were to get traded, the part of that when you saw that report, Adam, about DK, potentially getting traded, like there being some kind of structure for a trade with the Packers, like there was a wide receiver component to that too. Mm-hmm. If they were to make that deal and Tyler were to still get cut because of that salary number is just too high, I could see both things happening.
Yeah, I could see, there's a world in which DK gets traded and Tyler gets cut. Now, in that trade with the Packers, I think good old Daubs, he was one of the names that was floated there. And there was another one, though. I think the other name was, oh, God, yeah, no.
Yeah, Wicks.
I just,
Dobbs isn't that great either. Like,
no, I'd be more. I guess that's what I was getting at. Is I'd be more interested in Dobbs than I would be in Wicks. And again, it's by like that much.
Right.
Look, I really do believe that wide receiver is the position that is the most grossly overpaid in the entire league. And if you want to operate with sneaky efficiency with your cap, I wouldn't. I'm right at the dead 50-50 mark trading DK, because if you want to trade him now and not pay him that next big contract, I get it, because the market is so stupid for wide receivers, and it's not like offensive linemen in college. There's literally like I probably could walk off my front porch and bump into a decent enough wide receiver in my front yard. They're just everywhere.
And I want to bring this up too, because is the NFL pendulum swinging? And maybe it's a kind of a fun topic to end on for the night, guys. But Barkley gets a huge extension today, right? So basically 2 years, $20 million plus per year, becomes the first $20 million running back, probably deservingly so. But is this the kind of watershed moment of, okay, 1990s value of running backs is back, baby, and we're going to run the ball more often, and we're going to actually pay top tier running backs, because they touch the ball so freaking much, a lot of money. So Brandon, it's a lot of money, but is it a mistake by the Eagles, or no, you just pay great dudes the biggest contracts?
I don't have a problem paying number one running back money to a number one running back who leaps over dudes backwards and carries your team to a Super Bowl. So that seems like an okay value for the type of guy that you're getting.
He's got green on underneath there, Adam, today. So he's got his little eagle green there. What do you think about this? And do you think the pendulum is swinging back in favor of running backs again in 2025 and beyond?
I'm not sure if it's going to completely swing in terms of money. And there's going to be a bunch of guys getting paid like Barkley just got paid. Look, how many running backs are there in the league right now that you would hand a top of the market deal to. Like, and right now that would be apparently 18-19 million dollars. So how many guys are there? I would say Barkley's definitely one of them. He made me eat all my words last year. I was so wrong. Saquon's awesome. And look, he did, like, you pay the man. He brought you a trophy. He was the best player on your team by far. Like, he was the complete difference maker for them this year. And yeah, you pay him. I think where the change in the league is happening, and I've been predicting this for as long as we've been doing this show, like that with defenses getting smaller and everybody trying to prevent the pass game, and everybody tripling down on their passing attacks and all that, that the one team that finally went out and got a big offensive line, a good back, and a competent quarterback could go out and just jelly it down people's throat and win a Super Bowl. We finally saw it this last year. And I think that guys are, I think that teams are going to be shifting their focus to a much more balanced attack going forward. I think the days of the 2010s, chuck it all over the yard type stuff is dead. And thank God.
It's tough, though, that the list is very short on the guys that you would pay the other top tier money. And the snail brings up Derrick Henry as the only other. And he wouldn't be a guy who would you'd pay upwards of $20 million to, because shoot, you just saw him go to free agency, and the Ravens, it seemed like other teams were reluctant to pay him. The Ravens were like, well, we'll pay you a decent amount. And that paid off. Like, Derrick Henry is the ageless wonder right now, because everybody wants to stay away from running backs who are in that 30-year-old range. And for some reason, Adrian Peterson was like that, right toward the tail end of his career, to where he was still going where everybody was waiting for him to break down, and he's still going. Eventually Father Time catches up, and it will with Derrick Henry sometime soon. But he's a guy that I would probably take on as a one-year deal if he were a free agent too, just because, I'd bet on him over some of the other guys who you'd have to pay more long-term deals to. I'd rather stick with the short-term deal. And the only other guys coming up that would maybe even be in that argument of Saquon Barkley territory would be once Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson come up for their deal. Like, after that,
Jacobs?
Not that tier.
Okay. That's what I was curious. I was curious if, like, Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, those guys would be guys that you look at and go, yeah, I could see him getting top money. I was just curious, because I'm with you. I don't think they're real darn
right
good
now for this offseason would be James Cook.
Right. Cook is looking for 13 million is the reports. He wants to get extended. He wants 13 million. And I think now with Barkley making 20, the bringing it back to the Seahawks, I think if K9 could put together a full, good, robust year where he catches the ball 40, 50 times, we know what he could do on the ground with a proper team, he could put up Cook-like numbers. So if Cook does go get, let's say, 12.5 or 13 million and gets extended, he deserves it. He's really, I think he deserves it in this current market. And if I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, I find the money, and I don't think you're overpaying, because you're still saving $6 or $7 or $8 million versus the top guy. That's a lot of money, right?
Are there James Cook level players in this draft in rounds 2 through 5? Do you think? And not just like one. Probably. Like, are there multiple of them?
I mean, probably, but I don't know. There probably are, though.
James Cook is not top 5 in the NFL currently type player.
He's pretty close.
He's
pretty close.
He's right on the edge, but I don't know if I want to pay dudes that are right on the edge.
Yeah, I hear you, but he's been good. He's been durable.
If K9 has a James Cook season next year, unless he propels us to the playoffs and make a deep run, and it's like on the back of K9, then and there's a good running back draft next year, then I kind of have to go, well, he's not one of those guys that really tilts the field like Barkley, like Derrick Henry.
I think he can be. I genuinely do.
For sure.
Yeah. But Barkley didn't tilt the field the last three or so years until he got to Philadelphia. He was great his rookie year, came out of Penn State. He was, hot as a pistol.
Because they have an offensive line in Philly.
Right. Exactly. Right. So, I don't think the delta between K9 and Barkley is that big talent wise. I don't think it is. Might
Do
have,
you
may
think
not, may not
the
even
talent
exist.
gap between Cook and Barkley is bigger or smaller than the talent gap between K9 and Barkley?
I actually think it's probably a little bit bigger between Cook and Barkley. I think K9 actually, in my opinion, is maybe has a bit more raw talent, but Cook has done it a number of years now, and he's been healthy, and that's a huge thing. It's huge. And then this year he put together with a crazy amount of touchdowns also, right? So, but I think talent-wise, I think K9's actually closer talent-wise. And I know Buffalo Bills fans might be like, you're out of your mind, but we've seen K9 get out of a lot of with no blocking whatsoever, basically being like bottom barrel Saquon on the worst Giants teams.
Yeah,
we've seen
in
that
in a system where everybody knew exactly what you were doing at all times.
100%.
And an offensive line who I think contributed to Saquon's injuries because he had a struggle staying healthy with the Giants. And so
yes,
I know the snails on screen saying, do not pay K9. He's not big enough to be a durable dude like Henry. I don't know. I'd say give
pretty
K9
freaking big
some blocking to where he's not running into huge 300-pound defensive lineman on the regular every single game. And I bet you'll see him stay more healthy than he has been in recent seasons.
Yeah, I'm a big K9 fan, and I think that this year we're going to see a breakout from him. And I do think that you can pay running backs one contract past their rookie deal. Don't pay him the second one.
Just pulled it up quickly because I was just wanting to see his weight. So K9 is 211, which, you know, he's probably like 5'9", 5'10", right? 211. However, Charbonnet's 222. And funny enough, Saquon, they have listed as 234. Interestingly enough, just about, and then Derrick Henry's about, 7,000 pounds, right? So he doesn't count.
Saquon at 234 is also faster than both the guys. So,
which is insane, right? And that's why he went first overall.
Well, that's why Derrick Henry. I mean, he still has the speed and size at his age. He's a freak. So
nice.
All right. Well, guys, really want to thank everybody who joined us today. Want to thank our executive producers for the show, Sam Gelber and Ryan911. And coming up, later this week, looking to have EJ Snyder on the show to talk about his thoughts on the NFL Combine. So that should be fun. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you have any draft questions you want to shoot over to me, ask EJ ahead of the show. Hit me up at SeahawkersPod, or you can hit me up in the Discord if you are a member of the flock. Getintheflock.com. So we'll have a show coming up, and a big thanks to the Snail, member for 29 months. And go Hawks! Thanks, guys. See, honorary executive producer for the show as well, especially being a member for as long as he has. Big thanks to the Snail.
Heck yeah, man! And to all you guys that support us, up to 80. Viewers just here live as we were doing this. That's super cool. And again, if you got a little value out of it, little like, little subscribe, can't hurt. That'd be cool.
Yeah. And we will be out. I'll be flying out to the PNW for live draft coverage. So make sure you are subscribing and hit that QR code that's on screen there for anybody that will be, anybody that lives out there or wants to travel out there. We're going to be the three of us live streaming from the Clearwater Casino with Seahawks on site, celebrating our 18th overall pick. And I know we got some great draft coverage coming up, guys. We've been talking about that. And Adam, I'm really excited to dig into and Brandon, your QB coverage and see who you guys like this year. Who are you digging? Because it might actually matter a lot more to our Seahawks this year. So I'm fired up, boys.
Yeah, it's going to be a show. Look, I excited. I don't know. Only because I'm going to be honest, like, there's not a quarterback in this draft where you're like, ooh, that's exciting. There's a couple guys where you're like, yeah, okay, there's enough good stuff there.
Cam Ward fell to 18. That might be kind of exciting.
I don't want Cam Ward at 18. That's an overspend. If you draft a quarterback in the first round of this draft, you have overdrafted a quarterback by at least one round. At least.
Well, there you go. Well, we may not agree exactly on where quarterback should be drafted, but I think we can all agree on one thing, gentlemen. Thanks to Pete Prisco for allowing us to use his well, he didn't allow us, but we used it anyway. And we'll just close this off with saying catfish Pete Prisco.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hawks.